Okay, we are back. Audio looks good. My audio was a little choppy last week, so hopefully we won't have that this week. I sort of cut off. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes when I'm tuning, when our frequencies are tuning, you're going to find you have a really tough time with electronics. It can really kind of set electronics off. So, if that happens to you, don't be alarmed. Especially if you have a lot of people together, whether that are in a higher, that have higher consciousness, have achieved certain levels of consciousness, then you can really set off a lot of electronics in different places you go. Restaurants, all of a sudden none of the machines work. It's kind of funny. When you start to correlate that. So when we are in tuning processes, which I've been in the last couple of weeks, we can throw off stuff, video and audio and stuff like that. I did a video maybe a month ago, where part of the video, in the middle of the audio was just gone. And it only lasts for about 45 seconds. And people on YouTube were like, your audio dropped, for like 45 seconds. And I was like, yeah, I don't even remember what I said, but apparently I wasn't supposed to say it, and it wasn't for everyone to hear. That was just for me, apparently, to hear, because it just definitely dropped that part. So, anyway, we're going to talk today about leaving people behind and what happens there. And do we have to leave people behind? Because it is a big part of ascension, and it's not the part people like to talk about that much. But when you get to these parts, it's important to understand them a little bit more, because everyone will go through times when you have to look at people in a reality and decide, what's the old adage, do we stick or twist? What happens here? It's a line for us to go on. It's a line for us to be here together. And we're going to talk about that. So I don't have the chat up. I'll put it up in about 25 to 30 minutes. So I'll answer those questions after. One puts questions and I'll answer those after. Okay? Because it does distract me a little bit. So, okay. Leaving people behind. I entitled it that, though I don't really like that. There's a loss when we think about leaving. It has that same connotation as when we say letting go. Like, oh, let it go. It is like the most cringy thing to say, and it's the most cringy thing to hear, right? Especially when you're in the phase of not really wanting to hear that. And I always say the people who will say that to me is the person that never lets anything go. And there's a lot of reasons they say it. One is because we need to hear it. We need to hear at least have that reaction to it. It's not such a phrase, letting go, that's the point. It's our reaction to it that's important. Because what it shows us is we haven't resolved the situation. Because once we reach and have embodied in, and we're living from our higher aspects, and we're transcending their human aspects and human emotions, when you hear the phrase letting go, especially when you're in the middle of having to let things go, it is a visceral reaction your body's going to have. You're going to get pissed off when anybody says it. And you're going to also probably notice it's getting said by a lot of different people. It's a catchphrase or a human aspect has, but it doesn't really mean anything. Because we can't let it all go until we've resolved it. We have to resolve it first. So for me, it just shows you how much more work we have to do energetically to actually be able to move out of that reality. Because technically the reality hasn't collapsed yet. Even if no one else is playing in the reality with you, energetically, if we're still holding on to it, it's still alive within us. Even if we are not playing out with those people anymore. Which means we're going to either have a new cast of people come in and we're going to continue to play out with them, or we might have some of the old players come back. Normally for me, I get a new cast of characters, but I have found that tends to be different for everybody. Some people have the same cast of people come back in again. For me, I always got people. New people and a new cast. Now, was playing it out from a higher consciousness than before? Yeah, because I cleared a lot of stuff that was the last time the reality sort of pivot. We were clearing a lot of emotions and programming around that. Every time we end a situation or end a reality, a timeline ends, which just means we've run out of time. The timeline has come to a conclusion, and when we get there, and we get to that conclusion phase, then a lot of times we don't like what comes next, because we realize at that moment that there will be a next. And when we're in different phases of even human development, when you're the first time you go through like a breakup, you don't believe there's a next, right? You can't believe you'll ever love anyone as much as you love that person. You don't believe there's anything next because you've never experienced next, right? You haven't had that next experience. So when you're in that rebellious teenager phase, which we do that even in all levels of consciousness, right? We'll do that when we start trying to transcend our human aspect. We go through rebellious teenager. We go through that in our highest aspects. We go through rebellious teenager from our higher aspects too. We have a really hard time comprehending that, right? Like there's going to be next time. Now, once we continue to close out realities, or they fall down on us, normally from a human perspective, they fall down on us. Either because we didn't want it to end, or we tried to end it too early before it was energetically finished, so we cut and run, and then it just falls on us in a different way later. We have learned to understand there is a next, right? There will be someone else. There will be another job. There will be someone else you're going to fall for. There will be another friend that comes in. There will be someone else. It's just the natural order of how realities go. There will be another one. And I got to a point where that was very sad for me. That brought up a lot of sadness for me that, well, yeah, I really love this person. And the saddest thing about this is there will be someone else. And I won't care about that person anymore. And letting go of that, resolving that to even be able to even hear the phrase, let that go. And then you don't have any reaction to it anymore, right? Because you've let it go. As soon as you've resolved it, there's nothing to let go anymore. No one says that anymore to you. And if you hear it, you don't have that clenching up of your whole body going, no, I'm not ready to do that yet. But for me, the thing was knowing, I know there will be, because there always is the next thing, the next reality. It always does come in because we've experienced so much of the next reality. But resolving it is a totally different level than just saying. You hear a lot of people say, like I said, let it go, let it go, let it go. From people who never let anything go. So they're saying it so they can also hear it for themselves and for us to feel what that feels like. But use that as just a litmus test of how I resolved it. If I haven't resolved the emotion, if I haven't resolved fear, that just goes back into the emotion of there being another reality, I'm still technically keeping this one in place. And that's why the new ones can take longer to shape, right? We kind of stay in these, a lot of people will talk about fourth dimensional realities. When you go from third dimensional, which is just your human aspect realities you built, you got one foot in fifth dimensional realities, which is what you're starting to feel higher dimensional realities, you're starting to embody them. Perhaps, though you haven't really arranged anything yet, you haven't torn your realities down yet, that comes more in sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth dimensional realities. But you're just starting to feel fifth dimensional realities. You're starting to feel your soul, really, and what makes your soul happy, and what joy feels like. You're starting to touch on those realities, but you haven't reshaped anything yet, right? So when we have our foot in both worlds, some still in human realities where our human aspect pops up, and we still believe in some stuff there, whether it's, I have to make money in this job, or I believe in this system, I believe in some human construct. I still believe I have to live a certain way. I'm trying to take fifth dimensional concepts and force them into human aspect realities and think that's going to work. Those are all fourth dimensional places. It's a space, and some people stay in it for years and years. Some people never get out of it. Some people, their whole ascension process really kind of ends with them being in fourth dimensional realities, where you're still channeling. You might, but we're still connecting, but it's still a separated state. You're still seeing spirit guides, you're still feeling, you're still using that terminology. It's all separated states. You haven't embodied in. You haven't had to rearrange your life yet. You haven't yet embodied in. And that will come as you continue to go through ascension. Those things will come when we're in that fourth dimensional reality, and we're kind of looking at realities and looking at what we don't want to let go of, we start to see the cracks in the realities. We start to see the ones that we have this thing where we see the ones that are like, I really want to be able to keep that one. Even if you don't know why at that point, you're just like, I kind of want to keep that one, I don't want to let that person go. I kind of want to keep that one. And then you have other ones that you're like, oh my God, I can't wait till that one goes away. That person gets on my nerves so bad, you know, but there might be a lot of reasons why you're in the reality. Could be you're co-parenting with someone and you can see it, you know, maybe your ex-spouse, you don't really want them to be in the reality anymore, but there's a purpose for you both being there, even though you would like to see that morph into something else. You can see a lot of reasons why you're tied to that reality, but you're like, how does this one get reworked? Because I don't see this person going anywhere. I mean, in some cases they will. In other places, they might just shift to a different aspect. Or all of a sudden, the custody arrangements change. So there's always going to be different iterations of a reality. There's never just one. And just like when we are in our younger human aspects and our younger human phases and in our human bodies, and we are young and teenagers, and we don't believe there will be a next love, a next whatever, because we've never experienced that next love, because we've only experienced that first love, at least in this body, and the dimension we are currently in, because we haven't been able to feel multidimensionality yet. We're not in that space yet. We're not in those parts. We're still kind of really grounded in our human body. The same thing kind of comes in when you have to let go of whole realities. You know, you have to let go of these ideas of, you know, first love, true love, which is what it was back then. And now it's like, boy, I don't want to kind of let this stuff go, because I can't even fathom the next, because the next can't be rooted in human reality. So how the fuck do I do that? You know, how do I do that? I don't know how I do that. I have no idea how I do that, because all I know are human realities. How do I create something that's not from a human aspect? How do I create something that's not from a human DNA? How does that even happen? You know, and that is a challenging part for a lot of us for a very, very long time. And I'll always say, and I say it ad nauseum, if people have not experienced that yet, they just are not in that part of the process yet. They're just not there. And when they get there, they'll be able to say, yeah, it is difficult. It is hard for our human, because we have to be able to believe there is another reality. Now, it gets easier, because as we continue to go through, we always have seen, like, yeah, there's another reality. Higher aligned reality out there. It might not be the sexy one I wanted, my human wanted, but it's a happy, joyful reality. It's a peaceful reality. We start measuring our realities based on how peaceful we feel in them. There's a different bar to those realities. There's a different reason, you know, we want to jump into them. It's not the same reasoning, you know, it's not the same motivation anymore. We're not motivated by our emotions. We're motivated by different things. We're motivated by a purpose of creation. Creation is what motivates us to go on and do a different reality. But when we get in them and we start to see them start to go, whether the timelines run out, meaning we ran out of time, it's over, or, you know, they all kind of happen like that, really. We can see it coming and close it out. And the more in tune you get with your reality, the more you get in tune with when you start jumping into different timelines, which is always a concept. I think it's funny, because people will watch movies on multidimensionality all the time, but when they start having to grasp it in their own world, they think it's so bizarre. I get so many comments about that. Like, it's so crazy. Yeah, we'll watch a movie on it all day long, and it makes total sense. You'll see people talking about the new Spider-Man movie ad nausea on YouTube and break down every character and every multiverse possibility. But when it comes to their own world, they're like, oh, wait, that's crazy. What are you talking about? Whoa, girl, that's really out there. I don't know why you want to. What are you talking about here? There's only the one I'm in. Well, a facet of you is in that one. The whole point of really ascension is to pull those facets together, because you can see all of them. And then you can pick and choose the ones you want to do. But there's a skill to that, and there's sort of a payoff to that. That doesn't come overnight. You know, just because we've been in a reality for a long time does not make that shit aligned, and it does not mean it's going to carry with you. You can't ascend your consciousness. You can't live from your highest states of consciousness, embodying your soul aspects, embodying your galactic aspects, and it still look exactly the same as your human reality design was. It doesn't look the same. It can't look the same. It's a different template. It's designed on a different ideology. It's designed on different DNA. It's not the same. And when all those sets get changed out and the locations get changed out, and all of a sudden you go from living in maybe a huge house to a small house to back to a big house to then then you're in a condo. Now you decide you want to travel the world with a backpack, which that is something what some people want to do. And some people, that gives them the most peace and joy. That's not my idea of peace and joy, but that's why we all have our own versions. We talked about this before too. We have our own versions of heaven. That's what even trying to re-merge realities together again. After you've closed out and pretty much everything in your reality is gone, including all those people, being able to realign them from higher aspects is not easy because everyone has a different version of what their is going to be. If you might really like to create things with a certain individual, their idea of heaven, what they want to create, might involve them backpacking around the world for the next 7 years, or whatever their realities are from what they see, and that's not yours. So technically, could you create something with that person? Yes. Would it be a long-term, we're going to stay together forever? No, because we have two different versions of what we're trying to create, what we're trying to achieve. Doesn't mean we can't come together from here and there, but we have totally different versions of what we're trying to get to. And we kind of saw micro chasms of this in our human realities, where we get together with people and we didn't care so much about what everyone's long-term vision was, but it started to see as our frequencies started to, even from our human aspect, our frequencies shift and they change. They just don't shift and change you don't shift out of it enough from your human aspect when you're still doing it from your human aspect. You just have a higher graded human aspect in a sense, but you're still operating from a body really entrenched in a human reality. You haven't transcended that yet, transcended the DNA enough to be able to create your body from a higher aligned reality. We haven't done that yet. We haven't got to that part of the process. But even then you could see, I don't know how this is going to work long term, because we both have totally different ideas of what we want our future to be. Now we look at it differently, like our reality of what we want to create. But back then it was like we have different ideas of what our futures are. How does that come together? But then we don't see that. We judge things on the human aspect judges them on other criteria, right? Like, okay, are they attractive? Do they have a future, that we would seem as a worthy future for us to get involved in? Do we want to maybe live in the same place? Do we believe in the same politics? These are all kind of very superficial human things we look at that don't really matter. Like some people, it's like, do we like the same football team? It can get that rudimentary, when we're trying to look at who's in our human realities. Not even understanding then, everyone came together for a soul purpose. We just were not plugged into what that purpose was. I mean, we're never totally just going with no guidelines. It's just we take a lot longer to get there because we don't understand the game we're playing. We don't understand how we've messed the game up so many times in every reality that trying to untangle it all gets even more and more convoluted as we go. And we try to untangle one thing and we've tangled up something else because our agendas aren't clear. We don't even realize we have agendas because we're so used to having them that we don't even recognize we have them anymore. We just think that's just normal to have an agenda every 10 minutes because that's what humans do. We always have an agenda. I don't really care about anyone else in my reality but me. And even the most self-righteous human aspect will be able to get it back down to them. Even if we try to paint it as I was doing it for someone else, but I want their approval, so it always will come back down to us at some point, it just, that's how it works, that's how the human aspects work, that's what we go off of, that's how it flows for us. So when we start having to look at our realities and really look at them and see, well, I can see that won't work. You can start to really kind of pull the curtain back and see not the human reasons why it doesn't work. Usually the human reasons we put on why it doesn't work are the reasons why there's another reason underneath, we just can't see it yet. One, your time's up. This timeline's over, so this person's going to go do this act to end this timeline because you've stayed in it longer than you needed to in the first place. I can remember years ago when I was married, and I remember waking up and just having the worst dread. And it had nothing really to do with the partner at the time, in the sense, you just felt like you were just not in the right place. If you've ever experienced it, you just know it's off. This is not where I'm supposed to be, or I'm not going to be here long term, so we don't need to really think more about it than that. But because we don't like the having to leave people behind, we have a sense of a loss there. Because we have so much emotional stuff around it. We have so much obligation. We have so much baggage, emotional baggage around leaving the realities, jobs. We can get entangled in those things with identities. But for me, they were always a little bit easier, right? Because the same thing. There'll always be another job. It kind of goes back to the same thing we talked about earlier. There's always going to be somebody else you're going to fall in love with. It just happens. That's how it works, right? When you're in your human aspects, you might not believe that, but after a while, you start to go like, yeah, there will be. There always is. Inner stage right. There always is another person. We just might hold up how long it takes them to get there until we resolve the other person. And so we're technically keeping that old timeline in place. But there's always going to be someone else. There's always going to be another job. None of this stuff is that big of a deal. There'll always be another one come along. There's always going to be another bus in the corner. It's just, as humans, we just jump right on the next bus because we don't want to wait for another one. But when you get to your higher aspects, you're really picky about which bus you're getting on and who else is on the bus. It's like, it's just really realities we can play in. Because what we've learned is everyone's going to come through Ascension when it's their time, right? Everyone's going to come through it when it's their time. People are going to be doing it when it's their time. And we cannot force what we want on another person. If we do what we think is highest aligned, we cannot judge what we did based on how someone else reacted to that. If we feel like we have to now go do something else, we put everything we can put into this relationship and it's not growing. It's not getting past the same human programming and the same human bullshit we've been in for the last maybe 7 or 8 years with it, maybe 7 or 8 months, depending on how quickly now we recognize it and realize it's not going to go anywhere. We might have had we talk about quantum jumping, we talk about something else you can do, 2 months in 6 months, 2 years in 6 months, and jump through a lot of different stuff. But there are certain things you got to hit. That's why everything seems to come at you at once, because you had 2 years if you stretch this out, but now you got to do it all in 6 months. So you got to keep doing a lot of different stuff all at the same time and keeping all the realities together while you do it. It's they're very exhausting timelines to be in. They're not quick, easy things to do, but when we're in them, we understand that. We understand there's certain things we have to hit. So before we might have stayed somewhere for 8 or 9 years, and now we're like, after 8 or 9 weeks, we're like, yeah, I think I've done this. I see where this is heading. I understand there's a purpose to me coming here and doing this, but now it's time to let it go or resolve it all and move on. We have to be able to just exit out of that reality and close it out. We learn to do that from our highest place, but everyone in that reality might not feel we did it from our highest place. Everyone else in that reality might feel like, that was not a human thing you should have done there, Human aspects don't like to be left behind. It is the worst thing. They don't like to be left out of the loop. They don't like to be left behind. And it really gets their cockles up, when they feel like everyone else or someone else is going on and they don't maybe understand why. And they don't understand why all of a sudden the reality is changing, because we can see beyond the reality we're in. So it can be a lot, because some stuff you can't really explain. And because it would not be, it's kind of like if no one asked your opinion, we stopped giving it because it was not going to be registered, and it's not going to be taken in any kind of light because no one asked for it. So if no one asked for it, I'm not going to bother anybody with my opinion because it's not going to be valued anyway. It's kind of the same thing. Sometimes we feel like we could try to explain the whole thing, how we can see all of our other realities lining up, and this one has to go. It's not aligned anymore. It's draining us, it's energetically draining us, and sometimes we'll see it even outwardly start to drain us, as far as it might be draining our money. It's draining everything around it to kind of mirror the complete drain, because we start to understand that our energy, all money is energy, all that stuff is tied together. And when you start acting from a quantum state, all that stuff is kind of one. So you start to really feel the drains more. You start to understand that I just can't be in this. And no matter how much we've tried to shift it, it won't shift. So allowing others to go do their journey that's respecting other people. It's respecting how someone else wants to live. It's respecting if someone else wants to stay in their human realities and they don't want to transcend them. And you will meet a lot of people like that along the way, that's not what they want to do. That's not where they are. It's not part of their DNA makeup to do that yet. They haven't had that canon moment, if you want to call it. That's the Spider-Man moment where everything gets shaken up. They haven't had that yet. Is there a moment in their life like that? Yeah, at some point. At some point, even if they wait till their human body dies, they'll transcend into a different body, and they'll do ascension in that body, or maybe the body after that. Everyone has a certain marker, though. And when it's their time, it's their time. And if it's not their time, nothing you're going to say, nothing you're going to do is going to make that person leave those realities. It's not time yet. It's not time for their canon moment. It's not time for their awakening. It's not time for them to do that. So they don't have a lot of interest in it. You might have just been there to kind of enlighten them enough. Wake them up a little bit, make them think about something. And maybe 4 or 5 years from now, when they have that canon event, they might remember something you said. They might look you up then, because now, it's like no one wants to talk to the weird girl until everyone's shit gets weird. And then everyone's like, where'd that girl go? Where'd that girl go that was talking about all that stuff? I gotta go find her, or find someone that's talking like her, because now my shit just got weird. So now let me go find the other girl that talked about the weird shit. Everyone's gonna be looking for you when their stuff goes haywire. That's how it works. We just don't like to have to wait for that. We like to keep everyone intact. It's part of that group mentality from our human DNA. One of the last things to really go when we start transcending all that DNA and recoding to higher consciousness DNA. We don't like it. We want everyone to stay together. We don't want it to shift. But sometimes we'll even understand that us being there hampers their canon event. Sometimes we're trying to prevent their canon event. We're trying to prevent that awakening event for them, because we hate for them to have to go through that. We don't want them to go through that pain. We don't want them to go through that loss. We don't want them to feel all that stuff we had to feel, but they have to feel that. So it might feel like we're leaving them behind, but really leaving them to themselves, and that's kind of a good way to start to twist it around. We're leaving them back in the custody of themselves and their higher aspects and their soul aligned plan and everything that their higher aspects have planned for them. No one knows them better than they know themselves, even if in that moment they can't see that yet. And maybe we can see more than they can see. Normally we can. You can usually see a lot of timelines for a lot of people, and you look at it and you go, yeah, I know what's coming for that person, but there's nothing I can do about it. Because that's what they need. That's the event they need to put them into a different energetic space. That's it. And if they don't get that, they're never going to get there. They're going to continue to spend their time in these human realities that don't go anywhere. So when we have to start letting these people, releasing them kind of back in their custody, because for a while we will stay in a lot of realities that we know aren't aligned. It's just, we know it. We know it's not long term. We know it can't be. Sometimes it feels like it'll look to other people like we left a reality before it was done, because energetically it was finished. That person, if they're still in their human aspect, they might be looking for that physical marker the reality's finished, like whatever that is. So divorce papers are signed, or so-and-so's passed away, or whatever that marker is someone else is looking for. But for you, it just might be, no, it's done. Like, I've done what I came to do here. I can feel other realities are going to open up, but normally they don't open up till we say we're closing out this one. As soon as we say, hey, I'm going to close out this reality, you'll be surprised how quickly you'll start to see the other one. It might not be one you thought was going to come in. It might not be one you really wanted to do. It might be more program clearing. You got to go do that. Usually you'll know the ones that loom over you. I always knew the ones that loomed over me. That I knew would have to enter back in at some point and deal with them, and one of them I'm dealing with now, because I knew it was there. I just didn't want to go deal with it. It wasn't the sexy reality I wanted to go do. It wasn't my highest, it wasn't what I was super excited about. But there's a bigger plan in place where, if you don't work through all this stuff, then you can't get into the ones you want to get into. This stuff has to get out of your body first. You have to go deal with this stuff first. So when we start to have to exit and say goodbye to all these people that we really thought we'd be together forever, in a sense, and then you just realize it's not going to work. You know, there's just no way we can be together forever. When you can't stand to be with someone anymore for 15 minutes, forever is kind of out of the question now. At least for now. It doesn't mean later on there might not be another reality where people can come back, but in this moment it just doesn't feel like it's going to work. So, all right, I'm at a 30-minute mark, so I'm going to open up my chat and see if I have anything. I don't think I do. Okay, so leaving people behind is not the easiest thing you're going to do. You know, it is the hardest thing you're going to do. Anyone who says the relationships are the easy part when you go through ascension, no. The relationships are the absolute hardest part you're going to go through. They are the most challenging. Because we try to take everyone else into account. They're more challenging than when you try to do it in your human aspect, because in your human aspect you can only see your one perspective. The one reason you were there, which is really not the reason you were there, was the reason you thought you were there. You thought you were at that job because you wanted to make manager or you wanted to be CEO, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well no, that's not why I'm there. I don't know why I thought that. Well, that was no reason with the reason I was there, but that was the human reason I was there. When you start having to exit out of realities because of only the reason you can see, and it might not be something well accepted by other people, it can be exhausting for a while. And it also gets us to take great care of what we built after that. Because if we don't take good care of what we built after that, then we'll repeat the same stuff again in a sense, even though we'll be repeating it from a very different space energetically. And then we can kind of decide, can I shift the whole thing from this space, or is it still not going to align up to where I want it to align up to? We are going to you'll start to look at alignment as the most important thing. Is this highest aligned? And sometimes you'll say, okay, is it the highest aligned thing in this moment? Yes. Is it the highest aligned thing I can get to ever? No. It's two different questions, you know, but perhaps in this moment, this is what I'm supposed to do, because this is where I need to be right now, you know, and these other people can't be there. You know, it's not their time yet. If you just always take it back to, it's not their time yet. It's not their time to be here yet. They are going to go and live their human existence out. You know, whether that's going to be another 5 years for them, or another 10 years for them, or another 30 years for them. Time really doesn't matter anymore. You start getting into this very warped sense of it. You know, you flow with time, but you kind of live outside of it. It is not something that you participate in that sense. You don't really get bogged down on any of that linear stuff. You know, you don't care about birthdays. You don't care about any of those linear markers throughout the year. All those are very human things we mark. You know, the passing of time. You will have years pass, and you might not have seen someone for 4 or 5 years, and you don't even really register it as that long, because you've been in 100 different realities since then, and they existed in that one, and they don't exist in the one you're in. You know, if they're not in the reality you're in, it's not aligned for them to be there. And it's that simple. And that is not what our human likes to hear. But that is the energetic reason as to why they're not there. Right? You know, that's why they're not there. And it's not a personal thing. You know, we always kind of take a lot of that stuff personal. But you have to remember, this is a higher calling for them in a sense, and they're not called to do it yet. You know, it is not their time yet. They're not called to do it yet. So we can't mess with someone's timelines in that sense. We might feel that we can support them in certain things, like if they're trying to clean out the garage, and we're like, oh, I'll help them do that because I know that's going to help them expand out. All this clutter is in their way of expansion. They're trying to get rid of this stuff unconsciously because they need to expand out more, and you can't do it with a lot of dust and clutter in your space. You can't do it with all that stuff. You know, all that stuff has to go. You start to find that you don't have any sentimental value. I have no sentimental value at all. I will throw away sentimental stuff that is very sentimental to maybe other people that would see it and go, you should care about that. I could care about none of it. It's all attached to different existences and different realities that aren't even here anymore. So I have no attachment to any of that stuff. I continually will just throw that stuff out and not think anything of it all. Because all that stuff kind of continues to tie us to those timelines and tie us to the old. and we cannot transcend the old if we're still tied to it. So take great care when you are starting to filter through your realities, when you are starting to examine them all, and decide, really look at it and decide, can these things stay? Do these things have to go? Can it be aligned? And we will spend a lot of time trying to align stuff and reshift it and realign it. And it, after a while, can feel really exhausting. It was a point where I got to accept for one reality and one person where a child was attached to that reality, where I kind of understood that it's a lot easier to just start over with new people than to try to take the old realities and just continually try to realign them, because it wasn't a participation in that. You know, there was only so far, when people are ingrained in their human aspect, so far they're going to go. And when it got tough, whether they were starting some of their awakening, they would always go back into that human aspect. They would always turtle back into that, and it was always about them. And it didn't matter how long you've been in that relationship. It was going to get to a point where you could see it's just not going to go any further. In this timeline, we've reached the end. We're out of time. We're out of time with me playing this role. We're out of time with me being there in this capacity. Now you have to go do it on your own. And those are really the big moments when you give the reality back to the person. And it can be a very resolving and freeing moment for us, because we're not concerned about it anymore. You know, it doesn't matter anymore. We're kind of done with it. So, okay. I think that's it for today. So, all right. I'll see everyone next time. Bye.